with Gwen Azama-Edwards every Thursday at 6:15 on Goliath Radio. Gwen Azama-Edwards, retired city clerk, former city commissioner, City of Daytona Beach. The Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards on Goliath Radio.
Stan, you've been sitting much too long. Welcome to Truth, a radio program designed with you in mind, a program whose sole purpose is to empower you, our listeners, for information leads to knowledge, and knowledge is, you got it, power. And as always, I want to empower you to take control of your life, those things that impact you, your family, and your community. As always, too, I want you to go to the website at www.gwen-truth.com so you can access all of those all-important links that will link you to all important information that will make you what? All powerful. Welcome to Truth. Tonight we are going to discuss, as always, really, a very, very important subject. As it turns out, a very timely subject too, based on a situation that occurred on yesterday. But it's always an important subject because we care about what happens with the individuals who are part of our community. We care about what happens to people, period, because we care about people, right? And because we care about people, it's so important that we are aware of some of the situations that go on with people, that we're aware of situations and how to spot those troublesome situations so that we're able to be as helpful as possible to people that we care about and to people in general, right? So welcome to all of our listeners. Shout out to all of you as you have gone about your day-to-day business, as you have registered and signed up for health care if you did not have health care, to all of you who are going about the business of helping others and helping to ensure too that we all live as good a life as we possibly can. You know, I can recall the question that's asked biblically, and it's asked also in a worldly manner, am I my brother's keeper? And in actuality, we are, because to the extent that we help others, to the extent that we do what we can to ensure that people have as good a life as possible, not just caring about ourselves, but caring about each other. To that extent, we are truly not only our brother's keeper, but we're helping the world to be a better place. And we want to make sure that we do that. I do want to remind all of you who do not yet have health care and you want to sign up for quality and affordable health care through the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, affectionately called Obamacare, that you have until March 31st to sign up to avoid penalties. Now, I know that they keep talking and every day you hear something different in the news, but it's important that you do as the law currently reads, as the law currently requires, and that is that we all have health coverage. Why is that important? Because your health is important. That's why it's important. Not only is your health important, but the health of your family, the health of your loved ones, the health of strangers who share the same air that you breathe, that's important. So we just want to make sure that all of those who are in need of health care, that you do sign up for affordable care, okay? All right, wonderful. This weekend, I found out this from a mailer that I received from someone who was actually trying to get me to do business with them, but in it, they share some very interesting information, which is the fact that this weekend, Sunday night, 2 a.m. or that morning, the time changes. So, as we always say, you spring forward and you fall backwards. Springtime, you spring forward, which means we lose an hour and we move forward an hour, okay? Fall backwards in the fall, we fall backwards and we gain an hour, and the opposite effect. But this time we're springing forward, so be sure to add an hour to your time for Sunday, so that you don't get to work late, you don't get your kids to school late, and all that other kind of stuff that goes on. All right? Okay. Welcome again. As has been stated, I'm Gwen Azama-Edwards, former city commissioner, retired city clerk, city of Daytona Beach, author, minister, community volunteer, you name it, I've done it, I do it, and it's all about helping people, okay? And so our subject tonight has to do with domestic abuse, and we do have a lady who is the community outreach director for the Domestic Abuse Council, which is a local organization, and she is going to join me in sharing with you some information as it relates to domestic abuse. Her name is Darlene Wolfson, and it's so great and wonderful to have her on. I'm sure some of you who've been around for a while, you're familiar with that name, and she's going to tell you a little bit about that name, because I always want this woman to, her relative, to receive as much play as she can, because she is always out there trying to do some great and wonderful stuff for people. So, Darlene, I'll do your mic check as you start to talk and introduce yourself and share with our listeners, again, your title, your position, and more about where you work.
Okay, thank you very much for having me, Gwen. My name is Darlene Wolfson, and I work for the Domestic Abuse Council as the Director of Outreach. I've been with them for 11 years now in a variety of positions. I work directly with victims as well as doing outreach, speaking engagements, and working in the schools with a bully prevention program.
Okay, now, and tell us about our listeners about the, I consider her as famous because she's done so much for students in the area. Just share with them about it's your mother-in-law, right?
It is my mother-in-law, who
okay.
I believe is probably listening right now.
Wonderful, and I'm going to give her a shout out, but let's remind our listening audience who she is and the things that she's done.
Okay, well, her name is Barbara Wolfson, and she's been in this community for many, many years, and she knows everybody. I'm convinced she can go nowhere without running into several people she knows. She works for Very Special Arts Volusia.
Yes.
And that gives people with a variety of disabilities the opportunity to exhibit their talents in the arts. And everything from singing to dancing to painting. And she arranges art shows and performances. And the big thing is the Talent Night, which is in the spring every year. So keep an ear out for a chance to go see that. And
okay.
she's an incredible lady.
Yes, she is. And shout out to you, Barbara, for all you do and all that you've done over these many, many, many years. And she's always, I remember her always saying, whenever I used to work with her, she's stealing from Peter to pay Paul, you know? Because the dollars many times are not there for Very Special Arts, for the persons who she serves. And so to all of you who are looking for a place, besides the place we're going to talk about tonight, Domestic Abuse Council, looking for another place to help out, do help Very Special Arts, because they deal with youth who many times don't have the opportunity of exhibiting their talents, and this is the time and the opportunity that they're given through what Barbara Wolfson does with Very Special Arts. So shout out to you, Barbara, and thank you so much for all that you do. Now, Domestic Abuse Council, you and I were talking earlier, and what many people think about in terms of domestic abuse really has changed over the years as the types of partnerships and partnering of people has changed over the years in terms of legal definitions and the like. So how is domestic abuse defined now, and who does it include?
Okay, a good question, because it is often misunderstood. The Florida statute on domestic violence defines it as including people who dwell as a family unit, which means if you have siblings who have moved in together and been dwelling as a family unit and violence erupts, that could be considered domestic violence. There's a blood tie and they've been dwelling as a family unit. Anyone with a child in common. So if you have a couple that were never really a couple, they just did something that got them a child, and it erupts in violence eventually, that will also be considered domestic violence because of the child in common. So when it is a spouse or an intimate partner, it's also domestic violence. But a lot of people might not call us because they don't realize that it is when it's their adult child who lives in the home. That's still going to be considered domestic violence, and our services and our resources are there for them as well.
And because you mentioned a blood attachment, but for those who just find themselves together, either what we used to call common law, or they're not necessarily blood related, but they have a relationship that's going on, or that has been going on for a period of time, even in cases where it might be a short period of time, but they're together in the same residence, that is
that
also
would fit
covered.
the definition,
Yes, yes. Okay, now, I have noticed, and I'm sure others have noticed as well, that there seems to be an increase in the violence that's attached to domestic abuse. And you and I were talking, though, in not in that direction yet. We'll go there, but in terms of the incident that occurred on yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, when the lady drove her van into the ocean at the beach. And one of the things that is alleged, because we don't know for sure, is the fact that she was trying to get away from her abusive husband. There are services that are available through domestic abuse and other locations that would assist someone with that type of a problem, correct?
With the problem being domestic violence?
Domestic violence, yes, yes.
A lot of the clients we serve, and confidentiality protects me from talking about any client, but in general, a lot of the clients we serve are struggling with a variety of issues, and mental illness is sometimes one of them. It does not disqualify them from receiving services, but it does present a challenge for that person, in addition to the domestic violence, to coping with the mental illness or the substance issue, or whatever issue they bring into our shelter. They're there for the domestic violence services as well.
And you had mentioned that sometimes the abuser will try to select someone who has some type of an issue or problem.
Absolutely. The abuser is picking the victim and not the other way around. A lot of victims, a lot of survivors will say in a frustrated tone to me in support group or in shelter, they will say, now, how do I keep picking these guys? How do I keep picking these people? And the answer is you're not. They're picking you. They're looking for someone that will be easier to manipulate. So they are looking for people who may be struggling with poverty, with mental illness, with depression, often with self-esteem, usually with self-esteem. They're looking for people that don't have a lot of support network, somebody that they can manipulate, but that much easier to control.
And we need to mention to our listeners too that just as when the person comes into a center, that the locations are confidential. Number one, the information that's provided is confidential. But how would someone, number one, identify a potential abuser? Because there are a lot of people who say, oh, he's just showing me love, and we need to mention this happens with males and females who are abused. But, he's just showing me love, or that's his way of loving me, he knocks me around a little bit, and he just does that because he loves me, and they don't understand the seriousness of what's going on, because I would think at a certain point, some of that escalates.
Absolutely, yeah. We do have a number of things we consider to be warning signs of the potential batterer. Now, how I frame the conversation with the person that's disclosing will depend on what they're disclosing. If I feel like they're open to really hearing the warning signs, a full list, I'll go right into it. If they're just kind of opening the door a little bit, I might be a little more gentle. But some of the things we would mention is if the person is putting their hands on them in a violent or even playfully violent manner. And I hear that a lot. Oh, he just likes to play rough. He didn't do much, he just put his hands around my throat. He choked me. Well, let me say choking is different than strangulation. What he did was strangle you, and it's a very high lethality marker, and it's one I hear about a lot. It's extremely controlling and dangerous. But so a history of domestic violence is a big sign. So if he's got other girlfriends who've had restraining orders, it's a big sign. And I say we serve male victims as well. If I say he, it's because the majority of our clients are female. But certainly we're there for male victims as well. If they're pressing for quick involvement, it's a boundary issue. That could be another sign. If they don't have anyone in their life, if they don't have any family to introduce you to, don't have friends to introduce you to, don't have coworkers, that's a bad sign. And that's also a sign that you are going to have to be their everything.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be their mother, their best friend, their playmate, their wife, their lover, and you're not going to be allowed to meet other people in your life. So that's a very high marker of a potential abuser.
Yeah, they will work quickly to isolate you from family,
They
friends,
do.
and everything else.
They do.
Yeah.
So past violence is the highest marker. So there's nothing loving about hurting someone. If you playfully bruise them, that should never repeat itself. We make mistakes, we trip, we fall, but we don't accidentally strangle someone. So but right there, he didn't mean it. He just put his hand right on my foot. That's one of the ones I hear the most.
And I'm sure with law enforcement, it has been a problem and a real issue when they respond to domestic abuse situations, because as soon as they show up, even if someone has called that person in, automatically they then start to many times take the side of the person who's the abuser.
Yes, domestic violence calls are one of the most dreaded ones because they can turn very dangerous very quickly, and the danger isn't always from the person that you identify as a perpetrator. A lot of times there's a misconception about what the police will do when they get there. Often from people who have not had experience before with law enforcement, or they come from a state where the law is different. And what they are expecting in that case is what they call a driveway speech, where they expect the officer to say, you two just cool off, and actually they're kind of expecting the officer to play marital counselor or peacemaker, as opposed to an officer with a badge and a gun who's there to keep the peace. And chances are someone's going to go to jail that night if there's evidence of something having occurred. So yes, often the victim, once they've called, may not get the result they're expecting if they are thinking it's just going to be a good talking to that will change the abuser.
And we need to mention and talk too about those that are enabling abusers, and enabling also those who are abused to really stay in the situation.
What do you mean by enabling?
I mean, they're saying, oh, you know, my husband beat me up, you know, and your dad did it, and, you know, and we stayed together, so you need to just go ahead and just buckle down and just hang in there for the sake of the kids, or he's a good man otherwise, so he beats you up a little bit, but he's a great provider or whatever.
We call that abuser privilege. Enabler is more of a term from the medical community, so we don't use that one particularly, but we do say abuser privilege. And that's anything in the family, in the community, in your religion, or in your culture that sends the message that this is okay, that this is permitted, that you don't talk about it, that this is the way it's supposed to be. Because what happens in this home stays in this home. So anything that reiterates to the victim that this is your lot in life, you made your bed in that line, that would be abuser privilege. And there's a lot. It comes from all sides.
Oh, wow. How does, or have you seen where, other than when they come to your agency, where this person can actually receive some level of support? Or is there fear on the part of even their friends in supporting them because they're aware of what's happening in these situations and they might feel unsafe?
There's definitely some of that. A lot of times a victim has a support network that wants to help, but if she doesn't stay gone, they may not keep their door open to help her. And maybe she left and stayed with them, and he showed up at 3 a.m. and created a ruckus, and she went back, and now their door is shut to her. Or maybe there was some dramatic farewell speech where you don't understand him, I love him, and the survivor felt they had to choose. There may be that. But there are resources. I've seen a lot, for every church that I've seen say, you know, till death do us part, regardless of whose death, I've seen a lot of church communities really step up and want to be informed about the issue and aid the victim and support her in finding safety and support the shelter in our mission. So I've definitely seen good responses from the social service agencies, from the religious community. The idea that it's a private matter, though, is still very pervasive. That what's happening in the home stays in the home, and that's just not true. But a lot of people are very reluctant to become involved for their own safety, but also because they feel it's not their business.
And they may personalize it to say that, oh, if it were the situation were reversed and I was the person, I wouldn't want somebody in my business type thing.
Yeah.
But how guilty does someone feel then when they didn't step up or they didn't help out, and the situation actually does turn violent?
I would hope they feel guilty if they had that opportunity to reach out and didn't. I would certainly feel guilty.
Yes.
But it would really depend on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of times, it's very easy to second guess yourself, if
Mm-hmm.
only.
Mm-hmm.
And you may have reached out and been refused. Or you may, as we do see happen, have reached out and taken the victim in and end up a victim yourself.
Right, absolutely.
So you do read where the abuser came to the home of the mother who had sheltered the victim. We had a case, not we, my agency, but this community had a case, and I think it was Deltona, where the father had taken in the adult daughter, and he ended up getting shot. So there's an understandable reluctance for that reason, the safety concern, and I get that.
Absolutely. What does your agency recommend to individuals, be they co-workers, friends, or family members, in terms of giving advice or don't give advice, or giving maybe just the information on your agency where they can make the contact? What do you suggest that people do if they're aware or they suspect that there is a domestic abuse problem?
I would hope that they would speak up, because you don't know what that victim really suspected victim is going through, and just knowing that somebody notices and cares enough to mention it. If you are in an office setting, for instance, and you come in with a black eye and nobody asks you anything, the very clear message is, we don't care enough to ask. We don't want to know.
I want to know.
Now, yes, you may have the person you ask and they're really offended you ask, but I'd go ahead and take that chance. And then, whether or not I let them sleep on my couch would kind of depend on the safety of my family and myself. I would definitely give them our number, because we may be able to get them in touch with resources. We may help them apply for relocation. They may want to come to support group, and it may be safer for them to come into the shelter. But definitely leave the door open. Just because they didn't leave that first time you talked to them, they have a lot to consider before they leave. So leave the door open. Plant a seed, let them know you're there when they're ready. And a very direct question, instead of why do you stay, is do you need somewhere safe to go? It's non-judgmental, and it lets them know you're concerned. So ask, speak out.
Now, I know you take, you guys just note certain demographic information just because it's just part of your reporting. But do you ever, in terms of either meetings and you hear from other agencies, feedback that they've gotten from victims as to why, or what do studies say, why is it that some of these persons who are abused, why do they stay?
A lot of reasons. A lot of the reasons we stay in a relationship that isn't violent, but just also isn't healthy or satisfactory. People stay because they love the person, because they have an emotional investment and they think they're going to change. And we all can be guilty of that one.
Oh, yeah.
We stay because we may be all they have. They may have said, if you leave me, I have nothing. I'm going to kill myself, or I'll be destitute. We stay because that may be safer. If I stay, I can know to some degree where he is and when. I can figure out when I need to get those kids in their room and out of harm's way. And sometimes I can be the one to take the beating instead of the kids. So I may be staying because that feels like the safest option. If he's going to get visitation, or he's going to have access to those kids, or maybe even custody, I may stay because I feel that's the safest option. And money. Money can play a huge role. If I leave and he's the sole breadwinner or the second income that's necessary to make rent, if I leave, I'm confronting homelessness, I'm confronting poverty. I don't know how I'm going to feed my kids. So a lot of times it comes right down to the practical decision making, but we love them and we think they're going to change. We may stay because this doesn't seem as bad as what we confront if we left.
Now, for those who do leave, they contact your agency. What are the things, the types of things that you're able to do? And I know you kind of meet the person where you find them. What are some of the things that you've been able or have done for individuals who do find themselves at your doorstep?
Well, the first step is our hotline. 255-2102 is the hotline, 386-255-2102. And the hotline gives us a chance to find out a little bit about the situation. And we start safety planning from the minute we pick up that phone. We want to make sure they're in a safe place to talk. We're talking about the things they might want to bring to the shelter. We're letting them know about services so there's no false information about what to expect. And then when they come in, we're going to do a little bit of paperwork. You know, we have a lot of grant funding, and that means paperwork. And we want a safety plan, help figure out what is the best thing for this family. And this is survivor directed. It's empowerment-based advocacy. She or he has had enough people telling them that they know better, that this person cannot make good decisions, so we don't want to play into that dynamic. We want to help her do what it is she wants. So our case managers and other staff will meet with that person to determine what are their goals, short-term, long-term. What do they want to do, and what can we do to help? For many people, for most people, in fact, that's going to involve somewhere safe to live. Maybe it means an injunction of returning to the family dwelling. Maybe it means a new place to live. It probably means a way to pay for that. So we can't do everything. So, and it doesn't make sense to do everything for that person. They're going to leave our shelter and be out there in the community. So we want to tie them into resources that are out there already. We can help them apply for food stamps, but they're going to sit right there with us so they see how it's done. And do it together. Get them set up with childcare. Get them set up with, for example, the Goodwill Self-Sufficiency Center. Or any of the employment agencies. We're going to strategize with them, do referrals as needed, and we provide bus passes, we provide food, we provide clothing, we have a thrift store that's free to them, and if they need it, we'll try our best to get it for them, even if it's not within the purview of something that walked in our door as a donation. We do our best, and we help them apply for relocation funds and victims' compensation. So really, though, it's survivor directed. If they tell us what I really need to focus on right now is resting and thinking and learning a little bit more about how I feel, that's what we'll work on. But it's up to the victim or the survivor to decide.
Okay, for someone who ends up being relocated, what protections are in place to keep that abuser from locating them?
Well, the relocation program is actually, it's a monetary fund through the Office of the Attorney General that you apply for. It's a once-in-a-lifetime payment. It's not that much, actually. It's in 2 installments of $750. And it's up to them to decide where they want to go. And it's up to them to decide if they want to tell the abuser where that is or not. Now, part of that fund, you have to agree to prosecute and break off the relationship. Does that always happen? No. But often it does happen, just like we're hoping. Now, as far as keeping that confidential, where they are, we'll talk to them about safety planning, and that includes technology safety planning as well. It's a big part of it now. But we'll also offer the address confidentiality program, which is not witness protection. A lot of people think we do witness protection, but that isn't us. Address confidentiality just reroutes your mail. But certainly part of safety planning is going to be discussing, all right, who knows where you're going to be? Who needs to know where you're going to be? Can we talk about a P.O. box? That sort of thing.
We've said that the location where you have your shelters, that's confidential information you obtain from the individuals, that's confidential. We need to share with them that if they can come in and bring their children, they can come in and bring their pets. There is a program for pets. I've had them on as a guest, but that's available to them as well. But you said that sometimes, people will use other options. There are maybe family members they want to leave the children with, or maybe the agency to come in and pick the children up temporarily, whatever.
Yeah, this is going to be, again, survivor directed, but sometimes, especially if you've never been in a shelter and you're not sure what to expect, a lot of survivors unfamiliar with shelters may think of it as a cot in a gym, and we're not like that. We're much nicer than that. We try our best to make it as homely as possible, and families with children are sheltered with their children in their own room whenever possible, and it's usually possible. So if you want to bring your children, you're certainly able to do that. If you want to make other arrangements, particularly with teenagers, sometimes a teenager has a friend that they want to stay with, and they don't want to switch schools, which we don't require, but they don't want to go through the hassle of moving. They may want to stay with a friend, or you may have a relative. And then sometimes a survivor will come into the shelter and realize, hey, you know what? This is pretty nice, and I think I want my kids with me. And they'll bring the children in then. Occasionally, reunification can happen. There may be another agency, like Department of Children and Families, who have custody due to domestic violence and have placed the children in foster care or with a relative, who have decided that if you've removed yourself from the abusive home, we will return the children. So sometimes reunification occurs at the shelter.
And we, in talking about the incident on yesterday with the lady who drove her van into the beach or the ocean, and it said that she was looking for seeking shelter from her abusive husband. And you've mentioned that sometimes some of the problems that the individuals who seek help with shelters, they do have some mental issues at times that have to be dealt with in part. That's, and you have resources, you have resource agencies that you can refer the individuals to for additional assistance and the like. And we mentioned about the children and that situation. That, in terms of them coming to your agency though, is that always voluntary?
Yes. We are not going to be we are not a lockdown facility, we are not a commitment facility. It needs to be voluntary. The times we see this most often not voluntary is when there's an outside agency that has said, if you don't leave this home, we will remove the children. And then it's not really voluntary. When a person leaves a violent relationship is one of the most dangerous times. The level of danger goes way up. The abuser feels their control slipping. They may want to reassert their dominance with more lethal consequences. So if your survivor is not really planning to stay gone, except for this little brief time to prove something to another agency, she's just put herself more in harm's way. So we want to know that this is her decision, which doesn't mean she might not be conflicted. She may not be sure she's ready, but she may be trying. And she may remain in contact with the abuser while in shelter. That's not something we forbid. Again, we're not there to say what her actions should or shouldn't be. We're there to empower the survivor to make their own choices and provide information. And as far as the mental health needs or substance issues or any of the other issues that anybody everywhere is dealing with, it's not specialized just in domestic violence victims. We have a lot of people that are dealing with many, many issues, and our victims are as well. We would tie them in with services in the community, the same services you would tie somebody into if you worked at Stuart Marchman or any other agency or nonprofit. We get them set up with help in the community. But that we don't personally provide those things.
And one of the things you had mentioned to me too, which is why it's so important that people provide the support, financial support, in addition to providing, some of the other things that the individuals have need of, but the financial support, because you mentioned there's a waiting list, and I said to you, it's hard to imagine a waiting list for this type of and level of potential, violence and the like that's tied to domestic abuse. But how are you dealing with, and how do you deal with the waiting list again?
Well, we have increased our bed space over the past few years, renovated some to have increased capacity. So that we've done. But as with most nonprofits, we have funding cuts. So as we increase bed space, we have less staff and less resources to offer the victims we have. The way the waiting list works is this: if somebody is on the waiting list and a bed opens up, we give them a call. Now they may say, I need a bed and I've got 3 kids, so they actually need 4 beds. And I have 1 bed open up. That's not going to be the person I call. It's going to be the next person that just needs a single bed. And we go down the list. It's a first come, first served basis. And it may be that the first 5 people we call have a non-working number, and the 6th person may not want to leave right then. The 7th person may have already left and gone to a relative in California. So the list moves pretty quickly. Now, if somebody is calling and they are in dire need right then, and this is self-identified dire need, we will try to get them into a shelter in another area. And we'll ask them what area they're interested in. Now, we have a full listing of all the shelters in Florida, and we can look up a shelter anywhere in the United States and the contact info, and we can either make that call for them, or they can call themselves. Sometimes it's easier if they make the call, because they may want to think it over. They may have 5 minutes to give me, and they need 10 minutes, so they may want to call back, and we'll give them that information. So however they want to handle it, we can be the intermediary. The other shelter may need to hear us say, yes, we're full. This victim's calling me, but we can't help. So that might be a conversation that they need us to have. But it's entirely up to the victim if we make that call or not.
And you've mentioned there's been, 50% increase?
In bed nights over the past few years, a bed night is when you have a person sleeping in that bed, a child or an adult sleeping in that bed that night. So that bed's not available to somebody else. Our average number of bed nights just about 4 years ago was probably around anywhere between 600 and 700. And now our average bed nights that's per month. Our average bed night per month is usually over 1,000. So we've seen a huge increase in the demand without funding increases. And though everybody is up in arms, and rightfully so, about there being a waiting list, I agree, there shouldn't be a waiting list, but there is. And if you're that up in arms, you need to look at what's being funded and what isn't.
Right.
And you need to fund not just a bed. We can go out and buy a mattress. That doesn't fund that person's food, the bus passes, the staff member, the resources we need to give them. So funding is a huge issue, and it's a huge issue for all shelters. Volusia's not alone in that.
What types of things for those who would want to donate, in addition to money, I would say?
Yes, definitely.
What are the types of things that you all could use in terms of donations? Because I know my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha, has taken your center on as a place where we wanted to help and assist, and we've done it a couple of years or so. But what are the types of things that someone can donate? And we're saying too, because the location of the shelters are confidential, they would then drop them off at your store, your thrift store, which will give the location for that as well.
Right.
So,
well, it depends. A lot of times people want to donate something that goes directly to the victim, which is understandable and fine. You want that item to go directly to a victim, and often it's the form of a toiletry or something like that, and which is fine. It would go to the thrift store. But I want to remind people that 100% of the profit from the thrift store goes right to our shelter. So you are helping the victims who get vouchers and go and shop for free as many times as they need to. Not just when they come into the shelter, but as many times as they need to at the thrift store. And it gives them a shopping experience. It's not us handing them a shirt we picked, it's them going shopping. That's empowering. We like that. But items that you might donate to the thrift store, now that we've expanded, and we are right by John's Appliance on the corner of Bevel and Nova, we are able to accept household items, books, videos, clothing as well, clothing and shoes, of course, knickknacks, electronics, and furniture. We can take furniture, which is very exciting. And it's a lovely location. And as I said, I want to stress that profit stays within the agency. But if you wanted something that goes right to the shelter, some things that we need that people might not think of are the things you would need. Alarm clocks, light bulbs, toilet paper, paper towels, cleaning supplies, laundry soap, laundry baskets. These are things you might have extra. You may have an extra laundry basket. We need that. Suitcases, definitely suitcases. Plus size clothing, we don't necessarily get that much of that. And when you're thinking about beauty products, which we love getting, think about women of color. We don't get a lot of those donations, but we certainly get a lot of clients who need them. So if you're thinking about what you'd like to give us, we'd take just about anything. Health codes do prevent certain things being used, but for the most part, if you use it, we can use it.
And give them the address of your thrift store.
Okay, it's corner of Bethel and Nova, right next to John's Appliance. It's called the Domestic Abuse Council Thrift Store. It's a standalone building, and I don't remember the street address. I should have written that down.
Okay, but it is on Bevel.
It
right.
is.
It is off of Bevel, and those who are familiar with John's Appliance Store, it's just east of that, right next to it, east on the east side. And let me stress too that the clothing that is there is, it's great, awesome clothing. I had the opportunity of modeling along with several other community leaders at a recent affair that you guys had, a Red Hat luncheon. And all the clothes were just great. They were outstanding. In fact, many of us purchased them right on the spot. And these are clothes that are donated by local vendors. Are you able to, do you know them offhand so you can share to give them some credit? But I would just say that they are local stores that actually sell clothing, and they have donated right off the rack some of their clothing, and it still has, a lot of it still has tags on it. But they're, we give a shout out to them. You know who you are. And these are many times the finest types of clothing stores that you can think of in the area. So we do appreciate and just say to all of you, thank you, thank you, thank you for what you've given. And these clothes are sold then, as you said, 100% goes to help Domestic Abuse Council. And so you pay really rock bottom prices for the clothing as well. So shout out to all who are involved in providing the clothes available. And it is a great, great location for those of you who are looking to purchase something and have it end up being a contribution in a manner of speaking to the Domestic Abuse Council. Please go there. In addition to purchasing some things on model, I went there the following week and I brought another gown. Oh, it was awesome. Yes, yes,
great
yes.
time for prom dresses. We have a lot of gowns.
Oh, yes. And you have wedding gowns too.
We have a lovely selection.
Yes, yes. Of course, I just did my renewal of vows after 25 years. I was able to fit into my original 25 gown from 25 years ago. Had to get that out a little bit, I'm gonna be honest. But still, it was beautiful. But I will say that they do have some wedding gowns that are there as well. Just all kinds of items, clothing items and the like that are there. And again, as has been mentioned by Darlene, there are several things that these individuals could use. And just about anything you can think of, and you can drop it off at the thrift store where it will be find its way to the shelters and to the individuals that are in need of those items. There are times that people, I think, wonder about domestic abuse, and I know you got some stats there that you can share, and they, every so often they'll hear about it, they'll watch it on TV, they may have somebody that they know, a friend or somebody who's gone through this, but too many times I think we think of it as just being somebody else's problem. It's they aren't my relative, they aren't this, they aren't that. But I'm willing to say that I'll bet in every family there's at least one person that has dealt with this issue.
The statistic that we hear quoted most often is from the Center for Disease Control, and that is 1 in 4 women report being affected by domestic violence. 1 in 4.
1 in 4.
Now, the phrase, what happens at home stays at home, is so inaccurate. What happens at home doesn't stay at home unless you don't ever leave your home. You read about co-workers who were killed because the abuser came to, for example, the hair salon to get the victim, and you were a bystander. The productivity of a business when you have an employee who's dealing with domestic violence could be affected. If you're just going to look at the bottom line financially, that has a huge cost. Days lost, insurance costs due to injuries that are the result of domestic violence. That person is not able to participate in the workplace as fully as they might otherwise. There's a very real financial cost to all of us. The child that's living in a home with domestic violence is going to experience a lot of problems at school, perhaps, not always, but they may find academically that they aren't performing.
Right.
When you are worried about going home and finding your mom beaten up or hiding from the abuser, your first priority is not the FCAT. It's not your algebra test tomorrow. It's survival. And when you're a little kid and that's what you're dealing with, what are the odds that you're going to be doing like you could in school otherwise? So it's everyone's problem because we live, all of us, together.
Amen. Amen. Let me mention quickly, you're listening to Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards. My guest is Darlene Wolfson, and she is the Director of Community Outreach for the Domestic Abuse Council, a local organization, but they have other organizations, I'm sure, that are nationwide, because this is a nationwide problem. It's not just nationwide, it's a worldwide problem. And it's something that we should all be concerned about. This is WELE 1380 AM on your radio dial in Ormond Beach, Florida. It's also Goliath Radio. And you can reach us through goliathradio.com or, Gwen-truth.com. But do give a listen, not only in terms of what we're sharing here, but also once you listen, then act. And act by providing either funding that is so badly needed for the Domestic Abuse Council, and also by donating those things that they're in need of, as we have shared, but they can use just about anything, everything that you have that's available. And I will say to you what my mother and some other ladies have always said: don't give somebody something you don't want, okay? Even though I'm sure if it's just slightly used, they'd be happy to get it, but just think about the fact that, but for the grace of God, it could be your mother, it could be your sister, it could be some male in your family that finds himself in this situation. So we want to encourage you to give what you can. As I watched the beach scene that they were showing during the time of the sheriff's press conference thing, and I was watching as they were the individuals, they were replaying individuals who were, some were bystanders who just wanted to help, others were a part of the beach patrol, and some others, I'm sure, part of perhaps even the sheriff's department. But just watching, and I know the beach people are a part of the sheriff's thing too, for those of you who are listening. But as, I could not help but tears just started to flow from my eyes to the level of just pain that person must have experienced, even if it was due to some kind of mental situation or whatever. But to find yourself in a situation where you feel that there's no hope and your only way out is just to, drive into the ocean, or do some of the other things that we hear that people do in line with the pain and trying to just deal with that pain, that anguish or whatever. And the children that end up being tied into that and made a party to it, not voluntarily, because no child wants to just go drive into the ocean, no child wants to, but they love their parents, and so they will go with their parents wherever they're going. And that type of thing, it just brought not only the tears, but the anguish to my mind and my heart, in terms of watching that, and then watching the rescuers as they grabbed the what appeared to be a little girl, and then grabbed what appeared to be a boy or whatever, but there were the three children, and as they grabbed them and they carried them out, and then watching the one child as she reached and extended her arm as though she was going, back toward the car for whomever was there. We're a people. I started out talking about being our brother's keeper, our sister's keeper. We're a people who are made of stuff, the DNA that cares for other people. And it's difficult to watch something like that and not have your heart and your emotions moved to some extent, irrespective of what the true and and they're investigating whatever ends up coming out. The bottom line is that you got a mother who was driven to the ocean with her three children, and had things not gone right as they did or better, we could be talking about those four persons, those four bodies, in the vehicle. So we need to do more to provide help. We need to do more to assist individuals who find themselves, and I know many times, and I'm wondering if you hear any of this, where people say, well, they're getting what they deserve, or they shouldn't have married that person. You know, a lot of relatives would say, well, I told you not to marry him, or I told you not to marry her, or whatever else. But, you know, as people like to say, it is what it is. And once you're in that situation, something has to be done. And for those who are on your waiting list, who, you know, at some point in time, they're going to make a move or whatever. Those who have sought help through the shelter, and you guys do a tremendous job, just a tremendous job. And shout out to all those who serve on your board as well, your advisory board, in assisting you with making decisions on issues and things that are going on. All of your staff as well, because I know this cannot be an easy job of having to deal in this type of a situation. So I'm grateful to you and the staff, to Cheryl Fuller, your director, and all of you for what you do and the time, the effort, the energies that you give in this regard, because it's not an easy job. You know, I hail from social work and that kind of a background, so I know that. For those of you who are able to help, you know, you're so excited and just relieved that you're able to help. But then there are those that, try as you might, you know, they may just end up going back to that same violent situation for whatever the reason, as we mentioned earlier. What is it in terms of, because you guys have a call line, a hotline, as you mentioned, is that 255-21?
2102 is the
okay.
local number. The state number is 1-800-500-1119. That's 1-800-500-1119. That routes it to whatever country, to whatever county the call is originating from.
Okay, wonderful. So I want to make sure that I put that, and for those of you who are listening, I will be adding this video to, I am doing a video, and I will be adding this to our YouTube on the website, www.gwen-2.com. But it's just so important that people get involved, that they not just think it's just somebody else's problem, because like I said, but for the grace of God go we. And it's important that we support not only your efforts financially, but in terms of whatever volunteer stuff we can give, stuff we can provide as well. And are there other areas that you all have found where people, you know, can be of assistance? Because, you know, you're talking about your funding, and you're talking about legislation and the like.
And the law that deals with the batterer too, not just the victims. But I want to back up a little bit and stress that our staff does work very hard, and nobody gets into social work because of the money.
Oh, absolutely.
They have a passion to help.
Absolutely.
And just because someone went back to an abuser does not mean we failed. And it's important, a lot of newer staff have to get used to that.
Mm-hmm.
We are planting seeds. And we have people that come to the shelter multiple times. We don't have a no return policy. We know the dynamics of domestic violence means a lot of the time they will return. This is one step in the journey, and we may have them back, and next time, maybe the time they stay gone, they leave us with knowledge. And if they know to call us back, that means we did something right.
Oh, wonderful.
That means they feel the doors open and they trust us. And that's a victory, and that's success. And we have to find the happy success in the
Oh, I agree. That's why I keep doing this.
Yeah,
but information is
but as
powerful.
far as the community goes, some things a little thing that could make a big difference. If you're part of a civic group that wants a speaker to come and talk about the shelter, to talk about our services, which also include court advocacy and a legal advocate, a lawyer who does representations and injunctions, have me come and tell you about our services. Let me put a face on the cause. Let me tell you a little bit about some of our successes and some of our needs one-on-one. I can do a speech that takes 5 minutes. I can do a speech that takes an hour and a half. I tailor it to the needs. So if you are part of a group, whether it's a youth group and you want me to talk about teen dating violence, or it's a church group and you want me to talk about the role that the church might play in assisting a victim, or even assisting the entire family, I am there.
Wonderful.
So that's, it's not requiring anything of you, but the willingness to learn and give me a forum to do it.
Okay, and do they contact you?
They do. 255-2102, ask for extension 19.
Okay,
Yep,
all right,
they'll find me.
wonderful. Okay, wonderful. Now, what about legislation? Is there anything pending or anything that that would help in terms of dealing with this situation, or just getting with our legislators and say, hey, you know, you guys need to increase the funding for domestic abuse and violence?
Well, that would be tops on my list. That, you know, the Domestic Violence Trust Fund is part of what funds many shelters. That comes from fees that you pay when you get married or divorced. In tough economic times, there's less of all of that.
Yes, yes.
More violence, less money, so
yes.
that's not a great thing. But funding would be part of it, but also real consequences. A slap on the hand for a violation of injunction doesn't really send a message that as a society we find this intolerable. If you treat a domestic assault differently than you do the assault of a stranger, what's the message you're sending?
Right, right.
So we need to stop blaming victims. Maybe when a batterer assaults a victim, we shouldn't actually require her to leave the home with the kids and leave everything behind. Maybe he should be the one to leave the home. So, you know, the premise of a shelter is great because we need the help, but the premise that she has to be the one to change everything, not great.
Wow, yes.
Not great. So, yes, if we had sterner laws that had greater consequences, longer sentences, then maybe we'd be sending a more consistent message that we do think it's everyone's business and we don't think it's okay. There's nothing pending that will assist with the prosecution or conviction that I'm aware of at this time. But I'd love to have somebody call in and tell me that's not the case.
Now, have we covered the stats, all of the stats that you have?
We have. We've served in the 2012-13 year, we served 219 adults, and that does include men, and 166 children. So, and some of those are all unduplicated. Meaning, if I had somebody come to the shelter 3 times, they're not included in that. And that's a lot of people that do come back every month. We have 1 or 2 people who are returning that have already received services in that year, and we're okay with that. We're there for them too. And as you mentioned, thank you for mentioning Hush Puppy Haven. They do foster pets. That is not done at the shelter. That's done off-site. It's a confidential shelter program, and they have been extremely helpful. It's totally free. And if there's violence in the home and there's an animal, there's a good chance that animal is in danger, whether it's direct abuse or neglect.
Right.
We need that animal to be safe, and if that's what's keeping you from leaving, don't let it be. Give us a call. Let us help with that too.
Super.
We do have a couple of events coming up.
Oh yes, please share it.
Okay, well on April 4th, we are co-presenting with the State Attorney's Office for the 7th Judicial Circuit a workshop. It's an all-day workshop called A Brighter Future, Healthy Families, Community Support, and Safety. And this is for everybody. You know, in the past we've done domestic violence task force all-day summits. There's really targeted people already in the field. This one is for community members, parents, neighbors, victims, concerned individuals, professionals, college students. This is going to be at Bethune-Cookman on April 4th. And it's an all-day event. It's free. And we've got some great speakers lined up and a lot of topics, not just domestic violence, but we've got cyberbullying, we've got divorces, we've got injunctions, techniques for remaining safe, and that one is from Valari's Martial Arts. And we've got some general life skills coaching. And again, this is all free. You do need to pre-register, and you can call the State Attorney's Office to do that. They're handling that end of things. It's 239-7710, 239-7710, extension 14740. And that is the State Attorney's Office. It's free, but you do need to pre-register because we're feeding you for free also.
Oh, wow.
Through donations. We're not, this is being sponsored by Florida Hospital Memorial and the Volusia County Sheriff's Office.
What time does it start?
It starts at 9, although we're going to have some breakfast items prior to that.
Okay.
And it goes until 4.
Okay.
And there are 7 different sessions.
Oh,
so
it sounds like it touches almost every area.
It touches a lot of areas, and it's right there on the Bethune-Cookman campus in the President's Banquet Room at the Center for Civic Engagement. So we're hoping for a great turnout. We really like to see the community get involved. It's not just for victims of domestic violence, it's for everybody. It's a lot of topics that could interest you or someone you know.
That is awesome. Now, if you would share with them again the hotline number for those who either have an issue or if they suspect Is this the number they would call as well?
The 255-2102.
Okay.
Yes. You may want to talk about trying to help your sister who isn't ready to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That happens. Sometimes you just want to have a chance to talk to somebody else about what's going on and how can you help someone you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the hotline's there for all of that, 24 hours a day, and it's a real life person, not a machine.
Wonderful. That is so awesome. Thank you so much, Darlene. And this is again Darlene Wolfson, who is the Director for Community Outreach with the Domestic Abuse Council, who has been my guest. I want to just remind all of you again that you need to spring forward in terms of your clocks being set on this weekend, on Sunday, and continue to, understand that we don't live in this world alone. We truly are and need to be our brother and our sister's keepers, and we need to the extent that we can help, give back, because the more you give, the more you get, actually. And that's the way, truthfully, that it works spiritually, so that you can feel better and satisfied about yourself. It's hard to be happy for you when people around you are unhappy and not getting their needs met. So again, remember to join us every Thursday night starting at 6:15, or as you probably guessed, whenever we boot the big man out of the chair, as we discuss issues to inform and empower you, our listeners. Be sure to go to the website, www.gwen-truth.com. Do you guys have a website that you share?
www.domesticabusecouncil.com.
Okay.
Yes, come on over, and if you can't remember that, just put in domestic abuse, Volusia County, we'll come on up.
Okay, wonderful. And be sure to, if you have anything you want to contribute in terms of funds, contribute in terms of, clothing or other items that individuals who have been abused domestically have need of, you'd want to drop them off at the store, which is located on Bevel Road. It's at the intersection just east of Bevel and Nova Road, okay? And know that everything that you do to help individuals who have been domestically abused, or to help individuals, period, helps you, helps your community, helps your family, because, it's like that movie about paying forward. As you do that, then somebody's around to be able to help your family as well. So until next time, be informed, be empowered, stand tall for that which is right and truthful. Again, this is Truth with Gwen Azama-Edwards. My guest, again, Darlene Wolfson, Director, Community Outreach, Domestic Abuse Council. And she, like I, and hopefully like a lot of you, we're still standing. You be blessed and have a great week.
Every Thursday night on WELE 1380 Radio, Ormond Beach, Florida.
Great.